Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And a good morning to you. It's July 28, 2022, and it's morning for me, but it's as dark as night. It just got that dark. Yo, you know what's weird? And I'm sure you've noticed it too. The weather apps, and many of you have them, it's hard not to notice that they're not as good as they used to be. They can't predict the weather as well as they once did. I'm always amazed when I look at the app for the hourly that it just seems wrong. I can tell it's wrong. I'll check radar, I'll check it. It's calling for showers. There's nothing to be seen. It's just bizarre. But for instance, this morning, my weather app said cloudy all day. There was no rain in the forecast till much later. And then the sky started to darken. And I went to the radar, and good God, there's this cell that just popped up out of nowhere. It's got some heavy stuff in it. It's a small cell, but it's right over parts of Pittsburgh. Some people getting something, some people not. But it reminds me of how volatile our weather has become, more so than it used to be. And I refer back to a conversation I had now years ago with a commercial airline pilot who said that the weather is as unpredictable as he's ever seen it in his lifetime, and that you can take off with all the information, meteorological information that, of course, you seek out, and it doesn't much matter because out of nowhere, these things pop up. I guess I'm thinking more. Now, it looks like I'm not going to get any rain at all. It's starting to lighten up. It's bizarre. Some of you might be getting poured on right now. Just these little, and it's just one aspect of this thing we call climate change. And I bring it up because, of course, the big news in the papers today, the papers lag behind the digital news, but the big news in the papers is, of course, he who just loves jerking around the entire country, the world, and especially his own party, Joe Manchin, all of a sudden, just 2 weeks after he flat out told us all, that's it, I'm killing it, I can't vote for this, it'll cause inflation. All of a sudden says here Manchin supports the very package he did not support. Oh, they tinkered with it a little bit just a few weeks ago. You know, if he were a woman, I bet the word fickle would pop up in writing about him. Here's part of a statement he put out last night. Rather than risking more inflation with trillions in new spending, this bill will cut the inflation. I swear, I remember his statement about why he wouldn't vote for it, saying he wouldn't vote for it because it would cause inflation. He's something. Now, here's what I've decided. I'm not really going to react in an emotional way to this, other than to call him fickle. I could call him a lot of other names too, but I'll just stick with fickle today. Because I'm so sick of getting jerked around by him, by our media, who are always just, well, jerking us around instead of taking this, putting things in context. For instance, even this now is not in context. It makes it seem, for those who really don't pay attention, that, wow, so this is a done deal now. It's not a done deal. It's just effing Manchin has, for the moment, said he's for it. I won't believe it until the votes come in. Anyone who believes anything this guy says has got to be the most credulous individual. Here's a problem. Okay, so Manchin now says he's on board. All Democrats have to be on board or this goes nowhere, because all Republicans, and this is why I take to task anyone who suggests that there are sort of like moderate Republicans left. No, not even Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. They are solidly always together. No. So you need all the Democrats. Well, guess what? Not all the Democrats have seen whatever this is that Manchin is now swooning over, saying it's wonderful. And one in particular, I think you know who I'm talking about, has not been heard from yet about whether she supports this bill. So until it's up for a vote, until Senator Sinema decides to support it, we got nothing here yet. So I am not going to be celebratory. Everything I've read about it suggests that it's big. It's a major piece of legislation. It would be the biggest legislation dealing with this strange new climate of ours. And it does good stuff in terms of pharmaceutical pricing, does good stuff in terms of getting the rich to pay taxes for a change. It does a lot of stuff like that. So we will hope that it manages to get through with unanimity of the 50 Democratic senators. And then, of course, Vice President Harris breaking the inevitable tie. So I'm sick of being jerked around. Here's another instance of being jerked around in today's news. Vitamin D, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you take it daily? Me too. I can't tell you how many doctors have just flat out told me that is something you take every day. As a matter of fact, I've been told that everybody in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania should be taking it because we are one of the least sunny locales, living up to it today, one of the least sunny locales in the country, and vitamin D comes naturally, mostly from sunlight. So it's been a no-brainer. It's important for bone health. That's mostly why women get put on it, right? And this has been something absolutely uncontested. And then the news comes out today. Never mind. Literally, stop taking it. That's what it says. Stop taking it. It doesn't do a damn thing. That's the latest research. What I want to know is, what are those of us who are not medical researchers, what the hell are we supposed to believe? I'm supposed to, on my own, figure out whether this study is in fact definitive. I swear to God, I listened to all the doctors. Endocrinologists told me. Got to be on it. Bone density concerns, you got to be on it. And then I read in this article about vitamin D being now, yeah, well, it's been deposed. It's no longer something you have to bother with. I already took mine today because that's just what I do. I just do. You got to take your vitamin D. It says here that when they first started years and years and years ago to decide that vitamin D was an absolute must for better health, especially for bone density. The guy who was a big part of the National Academy of Medicine's effort to set levels of what would be, this is where your vitamin D level should be. He now says that this group of which he was a part, expert group, set what he now calls a, quote, arbitrary value. They didn't have a clue, really, how much vitamin D you needed. So he said they just set a value arbitrarily of 20 nanograms per milliliter of blood. That, they said, is where your vitamin D level should be. And then because of that, we were all advised, and I'm sure there was headlines trumpeting it in all our newspapers. It was on the network news that we all need to be taking 600 to 800 milligrams of vitamin D. And a lot of us dutifully did. And even if we didn't, our doctors hectored us about doing so. So this expert group arbitrarily set a certain level of vitamin D for us all. And then the laboratories in the United States, so if you get your blood drawn to find out what your vitamin D levels are, the laboratories arbitrarily set an even higher level. They set it at 30 nanograms, not the 20 that the expert group had. So, because your blood went to a lab that set it at 30, which, by the way, it says here, is a reading so high that almost everyone then in the population would be considered vitamin D deficient. So we all would flunk. I don't know if you're a vitamin D manufacturer. This would be a gold mine, and it has been. So I don't know what to tell you. They looked again in a huge study. I mean, huge. This is a large, randomized, controlled study funded by your tax dollars. And the results are published today in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it flat out says, don't bother. It doesn't do a thing. Here's what the study found in part, in plain English. Vitamin D does not prevent cancer, cardiovascular disease, nor does it prevent falls or improve cognitive functioning. It doesn't reduce atrial fibrillation. It doesn't change body composition, reduce migraines, improve stroke outcomes, protect against macular degeneration, or reduce knee pain. And it doesn't help you live any longer. And it doesn't do a damn thing for your osteoporosis. So the doctor, who now admits they had arbitrarily set a level back in the day, now says, don't take it. He said, my advice, and the paper, the New England Journal of Medicine report is very, very clear on this. If you, like me, are somebody who takes vitamin D, the research paper says, stop. Stop. Well, I don't know. I suppose some of us will. Some of us won't. Some of us will wait for a few years when there'll be another big story saying vitamin D, new study shows. And it's no wonder that we're all clueless. And by the way, before the article ends, they talk to osteoporosis experts all over the map, and they all have the same reaction to this new finding. I will continue to prescribe vitamin D. Every one of them says, I ain't listening. I don't care what they found. I'm not kidding. One after the other. I will tell my family and friends who don't have osteoporosis to take a multivitamin a day to make sure they don't get vitamin D deficiencies. But another doctor says, well, if vitamin D doesn't help, then what constitutes a vitamin D deficiency? What arbitrary level are we setting on that baby? It implies you shouldn't give a damn and not take it at all. And again, Dr. Rosen, he's the guy. He's actually, I believe, the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, I believe. I might be wrong, but I'm looking quickly to see if I can find his bona fides. Dr. Clifford Rosen, senior scientist at and editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, says, I don't believe you should take it at all. All right, so I'm just saying. And this has more to do with, maybe, and here's where media is not good. Science reporters are not doing their job. Science changes. It as more information, what is settled science at one point gives way to new data, new information. And it is, I don't know. But it just seems to me like we're all on our own with this. So even if a major study like this comes out, you still see the doctors in responding to it are saying, I'm not paying any attention to it. I'm sticking with what I've been telling my people forever. So I'm sure that if I go back to my doctor, they will say, well, just to be on the safe side, I would say, continue taking your vitamin D. Jerked around. Little Tony says, I heard this news about Joe Manchin changing his mind yesterday, and all I could think is he's going to back out at the last minute. Well, little Tony, now why would you think such a thing, huh? It's why I, like you, am not uncorking any champagne. And then there's not just him, there's that flouncy little creep, Senator Sinema. Yeah, that's what Tony says. And anyway, if he doesn't, someone else will. I'm not going to believe it until it happens. Well, good. You know what? It just shows that we're getting, we're learning about being jerked around. And every little step forward in a long process of getting something to a president's desk to be signed, every step along the way is treated like it's, it's the end result or something. Yes, big, huge headlines. Manchin has changed. He must just need to see his name in print, to be on the news, to be this big shot, to be a guy who can literally hold the entire legislative structure and hopes and dreams of millions in his grubby little hands. Unbelievable. Well, so much for my saying it wouldn't rain here. It's pouring here. I often say that our government is so corrupted. It's just corrupted. It doesn't mean everybody in it is corrupt, but the system itself is corrupted. And mostly, if you want to say, well, how is it corrupted then? You would say by money. By money. Right? That's it. Money. And here's another example of that. The head guy at the Food and Drug Administration that signs off on things like, yes, vitamin D, drugs, cigarettes, your food. Guess what? And he, by the way, was the guy really who had huge amounts of power. He was in the Office of Science and had a lot to do with authorizing e-cigarettes. He has resigned. And guess what? He's taken a job with Philip Morris. Okay, there, right there, evidence of corruption. And yet, I hasten to add that nothing he did is illegal. But that's because our system is corrupted. That we have no rules in our government that say you cannot one day be paid by taxpayers to have a job regulating, let's say, cigarette consumption, and then walk out the door, turn around the next day, join the very corporation manufacturing that which you were regulating. It's unethical, obviously, and it should be illegal, but it is not. I've always marveled at it, the revolving door, even in as much as people who are elected to Congress for years and years and years, and then they get defeated. What do they end up doing? Right. They end up lobbying Congress. They end up using those connections. And as lobbyists, they end up being the purveyors of the money that corrupts. It's really something. And if you can't have a government that is capable of policing itself, then you're going to have a corrupt government. Do I have a caller? I'm sorry, I just saw that. Caller, go ahead.
Good morning, Lynn. I am calling you to thank you to know about the vitamin D. I have my bottle sitting on the island, and I mean, this is just crazy. I haven't even heard this. But what really bothers me, our daughter lives in California, and she was told everybody takes vitamin D. And I just said, Katie, I don't understand it. With all that sun, I mean, none of it makes any sense. Remember when we were told if you're a senior, take a baby aspirin every day?
Oh, yeah. And now that's been said.
Absolutely not.
Wrong.
Do not take.
Right.
I mean, so what
do we do? We're all on our own.
It's true. You have to be your own. You have, but even if you're reading information, it is dispelled in a couple months. Who do you listen to? I don't understand. I'm like you. I don't understand anything anymore. I really don't.
Well, that's a sign that you're thinking straight. You don't understand anything anymore.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, well, no, it's the people who think they understand stuff that are obviously delusional these days. I don't know what to tell you, because I got a feeling our doctors are going to continue as they did in this. Or, by the way, the article I read was in today's New York Times. I think our doctors are going to continue. You know, they're better safe than sorry. That's what I'm going to bet. It's like it doesn't harm you. At least they haven't found that out yet. Taking the vitamin D. I don't know. I have a feeling I'm going to keep taking it. I don't know.
Are you?
I don't know. So I can see your daughter? No. Because as you said, she's in sunny California. But us, the fact that we really don't get vitamin D from our environment as much as most people in the country do, I don't know. I mean, I might not take as much as I do. I don't. You know what? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's almost like we don't get a lot of sun, but when it is sunny and I'm a gardener and I go out, I'm like covered. Right. I don't want to be, and I'm spraying myself and I'm putting SPF 70 on, and then I'm afraid to be bit by a tick. I mean, you could it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
It's too
and
much.
I know your mom is going to be 100. Bless her heart. My mom lived to be 97. And she never, she took a vitamin pill. That was it. And ate well. I don't know. It's very confusing.
I think we're being played. I really think the pharmacist, I had a friend over yesterday and her husband takes so many pills that he takes pills to deal with the side effects of other pills that he has to take, right? She said it's just unbelievable. She doesn't take any, and she's trying desperately to continue not to get into the pill taking thing. Now, I take quite a few myself, and I've talked to my doctors many times. What can I get rid of? I'm sick of these pills. And a lot of them I really can't. But I think a lot of us are taking stuff that we needn't. It complicates our chemistry. I don't know. I think
personally, a lot of it is just greed-based. And I mean, what in the world would people living in California be taking vitamin D?
You tell me.
And my daughter works for Apple, and they have access to the greatest doctors there. So, I mean, it's not like she was going to some quack, but everybody's on it. I don't know. But
everybody drinks the same Kool-Aid. I mean, that was the mantra. It was not. I remember sort of, harping on people who didn't take it. I'm saying, you've got to take vitamin D. It's like,
exactly.
It's a must. Yeah. Well,
you have confused me because I just thought, I'm not going to take my vitamin D today. Now you said you're going to
for it. I mean, no, go for it. Live dangerously. Go ahead. Don't take it.
And then when you started, while I was waiting, you started talking about Manchin, and I have this visceral reaction when I see him and hear him. Our son lives in Charlotte, and so we have to, when we drive through his areas. And I just think West Virginia is so poor. How could those people vote for him? I don't understand it.
Well, there you go. See, you don't understand it.
I don't understand anything. That's it.
Me either. Oh. Well, we're in the same boat.
Well, I think, I'm 73, and I think it's just harder for us because we were raised one way, and my kids asked us all the time, was it ever like this? No.
Simpler. It was a simpler reality. And we weren't drowning in so-called information, which we later find out is disinformation. So who the heck knows?
And one other thing before I get off, the other day when I heard that Donald Trump gave whatever it was in a rally, but it was called the Law and Order. Law and Order, that he would have the audacity to go to Washington, D.C.
I can't imagine what you're even just talking about.
Well, it was
where he would be.
Him and Pence were dueling in D.C. And his, whatever it was, I don't know if it was a rally or a breakfast or whatever.
No, it was a bigger to-do. Yeah, it was a bigger to-do. Some new group of influential, crazy people who want to ensure that even if Trump disappears, Trumpism and what he has begot.
Yeah,
exactly. Will stay with us. Terrifying stuff. And I can't imagine what you're talking about, that you think it was somehow strange that Donald Trump should be talking about law and order.
but to go there and the law and order, I don't know. I better get off. Okay. But thank you for the information, and maybe I will take my vitamin D today.
What the hell? I don't. You know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. And the sun's coming out. You can go get some vitamin D outside.
Well, it's raining in Allison Park, so I don't know. It's one of those summer days. But thank you, Lynn, and I adore your show.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate the call. Bye-bye. I'm looking at an H.G. Wells quote. Human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. Well, yeah. How's that race going between education and catastrophe? I don't know. Catastrophe is coming up really, really, really strong on the inside track. I don't know if it can be averted. Jeez. God. Roger writes, as a lowly middle-class employee, before starting employment, I have to sign a non-compete clause, and the company handbook is very clear on these conflict of interest activities or one might privately benefit due to work duties. Example, free concert tickets if I purchase over $5,000 whatever. Why are our politicians exempt from such practices? I always think of Dick Cheney working for Halliburton, right, who was the CEO, I believe, then becoming vice president, and then going back to work for Halliburton, right? All of that is what? Defense industry. And you saw what war he got us into. It's so obviously corrupt. But as Roger points out, little people, like I always had a non-compete clause. Anyone working in television always had one. So that if you dared to leave the employ of one station, you could not show up on another in the same market for years, or at least a year. And that was collusion by all the TV stations. While every once in a while they might want to steal somebody from another station, they sure as hell didn't want any other station stealing their people, so they all just agreed, we'll keep them from being able to ply their trade. Not so if you're, if you're a major scientist at the FDA and you decide, I think that Philip Morris is just a wonderful, wonderful corporation, and I think I'd like to use my scientific expertise to benefit them. Wow. Here's another kind of revolving door crap that goes on in Washington that drives me insane. I think it was a week or so ago that I said to you that I happened to have on, maybe it was after one of the hearings, and CNN or MSNBC popped up. And what did I say? Geez, I'm sorry. Something passed my eye and took my brain with it. And I said that there was a woman. It was after one of the hearings. There was a woman who I'd never seen before. And oh my God, she was being so outraged by what had happened in the Trump White House on January 6th. She was beside herself. And then I saw, because they stick it under, that she was herself a former employee of Donald Trump's White House. Why can't I? Come on. Let me see this. Okay, her name was Alyssa. Remember I said her name is Alyssa? I couldn't remember. Here's her name, because I see her now again. She's in the news again. Alyssa Griffin. I saw her on, I'm not sure where, but there she was. She had been the White House Director of Strategic Communications for Donald Trump and assistant to the president. Okay. She resigned 1 month before he left office. Okay. So she hung with him throughout and aided and abetted his drift. And then she gets hired to be freaked out and self-righteous about what horrors. I cannot believe. And I was so angry that whatever station I was looking at had allowed her to have this post. I don't know why I can't find where she had been, but where she is now is fascinating because she's moved ahead again. Now, this is one of these Trump enablers, really working at a high level, assistant to President Trump, who's not only going to survive, she's going to prosper because the networks have a reason. And it could be that she's attractive and thin and has good legs and is glib and well-spoken. And yeah, she's got all the skills they want. That's why she was in strategic communications at the White House. And they're quite willing. So she has now gotten a new job where she is on The View, an ABC show, which I never watch, but she will be replacing the loathsome Meghan McCain. And in a story I read about her that was published not in an American paper, but in the UK, she is, and there's pictures of her laughing with Donald Trump. Unbelievable. Here she was, somebody who was an essential part of that White House, that has destabilized this country. Apparently, a lot of people at ABC are totally freaked out. One source said, my jaw dropped when I was told she was the pick. Well, ABC thinks she's going to be great. By the way, her father, not that the sins of your father should lay heavily on you, her father, who, by the way, is so despicable, he wouldn't even go to her wedding recently because she has turned against Donald Trump. Her father headed some file. I can't find it. Some horrible, I gotta find it because it was unbelievable. I can't. Dang it. Anyway, yeah, her father is some totally vile character. And but these are successful people. They know how to navigate the corrupt US of A. And yeah, she's heading to a bigger paycheck. She's got a beautiful smile, and she's smiling even more. That's wonderful. Here's what she said, by the way, when she resigned. I have to find this because she resigned 1 month before. Well, so it was before 1 month before Trump. Really, I think. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for this. See, this is. I used to have paper, I would get all this stuff in paper and I would be able to highlight stuff so I could immediately see it. And here it is. Here's what she said. She tweeted this on December 3rd, 2020. It's been the honor of a lifetime to serve in the Trump administration over the last 3.5 years. First as press secretary to the vice president, then as press secretary for the Department of Defense, and most recently as White House communications director. I am deeply proud of the things we were able to accomplish to make our country more secure. Unbelievable. So she works in the Trump administration right alongside him for more than 300 years, the honor of a lifetime. And then she pops up getting paid. What is with the capacity so many people have for such hypocrisy? It's like that congressman from Pennsylvania who votes against gay marriage and then attends his son's gay marriage. Do these people? Is there a part of their brain that isn't functioning? Forgive me. Oh. Oh, by the way, the gun makers got called before was it a house committee yesterday, and the guy whose company made the gun that did the Uvalde massacre said these murders are local problems that have to be solved locally. Never mind that his company's revenue from AR-15 rifles has tripled just in the last 2 years. I have insomnia. Why am I having trouble sleeping? These people, I don't think, have any trouble sleeping. They can turn on a dime, not get whiplash. The rest of us are out here getting whiplash all the time just from watching the news. Vitamin D, Joe Manchin, yes, no, this, that. I mean, It's something, isn't it? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share with you, and I did promise this yesterday, I'm going to share with you a obituary. You know, my favorite thing. And I want to thank Milton for sending me this. Whoops. Forgive me. Oh, man. Yeah, sometimes I listen to this old lady and she does this show and then she tries to find stuff she wants to share with us. And then you have to sit and listen because she gets all mixed up trying to work her computer. And it's maddening. But mostly for some reason I still listen. Okay, here it is. A woman named Emma Gatewood. Do you know her? I never heard of her either. And this is something wonderful that the New York Times has done for the last years as a kind of mea culpa and an attempt to resurrect lives of people who should have been honored during their lives, or at the very least with a New York Times obituary when they died, but were not. And they were not for two reasons. One, they weren't white, and the second, they weren't men. And so the New York Times has done this thing where they go and look for people who deserved one of their big obituaries. And they do them now, even if they're a bit late. And Emma Gatewood is one such woman. Actually, here's what they say. This is part of a series they called Overlooked. Since 1851, obituaries in the New York Times have been dominated by white men. With this, and they do it quite often. They're wonderful. We're adding the stories of remarkable people whose deaths went unreported in the Times at the time. It's a pretty remarkable thing, and I just want to, rather than like hem and haw and go in and out, if you don't mind, I'll just read it. Okay, I will. Because it's well done. What the public knew about Emma Gatewood was already remarkable. She was the first woman to hike the entire Appalachian Trail by herself in one season. She was 67 years old when she did it. She was a mother of 11, a grandmother, and even a great-grandmother when she accomplished this feat in 1955. A great-grandmother, 11 children, 67 years old, and she takes off. And by the way, there's a picture of her. She didn't have any gear. Zero. She had on a pair of Keds. She did the entire Appalachian Trail alone. No tent, no backpack. She had a little sack she carried. Okay, I better go back. But and she did become famous at the time. But the belated New York Times obit says, but what the public didn't know when they did learn about her amazing conquering of the Appalachian Trail in one fell swoop, they did not know that Grandma Gatewood, as she was called by media, had survived 30 years of sexual abuse and severe beatings. Hence, by the way, 11 children by her husband. Often to escape him, she would run into the woods, and she came to view the wilderness as restorative. and protective. During her trek on the Appalachian Trail, word of her passage started to spread from town to town along this over 2,000-mile route from Georgia to Maine. And sightings of her were catnip to local newspaper reporters who took to the trail to interview her as she passed through. So, boy, I mean, she became a celebrity. That Gatewood was alone and in her 60s was amazing. If a woman of her age could hike this trail all the way in one season, a lot of other women said, then they must be able to too. So she has a citation at the Appalachian Trail Museum that says she inspired two distinct movements in long distance hiking: women through hikers and the ultralight movement. And she was carrying next to nothing. By the time she died at the age of 85 in 1973, she had hiked the length of the Appalachian Trail 3 times and was the first person, man or woman, to conquer it more than once. 3 times. In 1959, she set off to conquer the 2,000 miles of the Oregon Trail, trekking alone from Independence, Missouri to Portland, Oregon. At this time, newspapers were calling her America's most celebrated pedestrian. The story of the horror of her home life did not emerge for more than half a century, until way after her death, when a newspaper reporter told her story in a book that was published in 2014 called Grandma Gatewood's Walk. He worked for the Tampa Bay Times, and she was his great-great-aunt. And in his research, he went to talk to her surviving children. And they entrusted him with her journals, her letters, her scrapbooks. And it's there that he found stark references to what she had withheld from all news interviews during her life, that her husband had nearly beaten her to death several times. Her children told him that her father's sexual hunger was insatiable and that he forced himself on her several times a day. This amazed me. In 1937, she picked up and moved, just got the hell out. And she left behind 2 of her youngest children. They were 9 and 11, 2 daughters. And she made off for California. She didn't think her husband would abuse the girls, and she couldn't afford to take them with her. And she wrote a letter to them with no return address, in which she said, "I have suffered enough at his hands to last me for the next 100 years." But she couldn't bear being away from these girls. And she returned after just a few months. This was in Ohio. And when she came back, her husband wouldn't let her out of his sight. She wrote in one journal in 1938 that he beat her beyond recognition 10 times. And the Appalachian Trail was a refuge for her. She was born in Ohio in 1887. Her mother, good God, gave birth to 15 children who slept 4 to a bed in the family's log cabin. And then she married at 19, and he put her to work as a farmer. She built fences, mixed cement, in addition to her household chores, getting beaten every 5 seconds, being raped every twice or 3 times a day, and bearing him 11 children. In one incident, when he broke her teeth and cracked one of her ribs, she threw a sack of flour at him. And she ended up being arrested and put in jail. That tells you a lot. The next day, however, the mayor, they never quite say the city, saw her battered face and took her to his own home, where she remained under his protection until she got back on her feet. And then a short time later, her husband took off. And he was finally out of her life. And that's when she started hearing about this Appalachian Trail. She had always found this haven in the woods. Though her formal education ended in the 8th grade, she was resourceful and taught herself about wildlife and the medicinal properties of plants and which ones were edible. She started in Georgia. She just left. She didn't tell anybody she was going. She didn't tell her children where she was going. She was afraid somebody was going to try to stop her, thinking she was out of her mind. She sewed herself a small drawstring sack, and she carried in it a shower curtain to keep the rain off her, a Swiss Army knife, a flashlight, Band-Aids, iodine, a pen, and a small notebook. Also, some Vienna sausages, raisins, peanuts, and bouillon cubes. She went through 7 pairs of canvas shoes, many of them Ted's. She didn't take a tent. Oh, my God. Spent many nights on the cold ground under picnic tables. Sometimes people would take her in. She completed the hike in 146 days, an average of 14 miles a day. It was considered a remarkable pace, especially given her age, that she was a great-grandmother, her limited year, and the condition then of the trail. The members of at least one Boy Scout troop and their leaders reported that they could not keep up with her. As she closed in on the northern terminus of the trail, in a rugged part of Maine, a newspaper reporter extolled her achievement and wrote, "Much of America is pulling for her." People, he said, were clipping newspaper articles at kitchen tables and watching her traipse across the evening news on television, wondering whether she'd survive in so mean a place. The final line of the obituary is, "Little did they know what she had already survived." Emma Gatewood. Wow. Well, that's it. I thank you for listening. And I'm starting my long weekend now. And I hope you have a good 3 days till I show up again, which will be on Monday. Be careful. There's viruses out there. And don't bother taking your vitamin D. Or do. I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference. See ya.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.